This is a story about the beginning. Not just the beginning of the world, but the beginning of us. Our choices, our families, our struggles, and our hope. The book of Genesis is the first book of the Bible, and it's full of drama, beauty, failure, and redemption. Let's begin where everything began. Adam and Eve, the first choice. In the very beginning, there was nothing, only God. Then, with just a word, God created everything. Light flooded the darkness. The sky stretched out wide. Land rose from the waters. Trees and flowers burst into life. Birds soared. Fish swam. Lions roared. Stars filled the heavens. And finally, God created people. He formed a man from the dust of the earth. He breathed life into him. This man was named Adam. But God saw that it wasn't good for Adam to be alone. So he created a companion, Eve, the first woman, crafted from Adam's own rib. God placed them in a paradise unlike anything we've ever known, the Garden of Eden. There, everything was perfect. No sickness. No death. No pain. No shame. No fear. Adam and Eve walked with God, face to face. They were completely free and deeply loved. God gave them everything they needed, with just one rule. You can eat from any tree in this garden, except one. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat from it, you will surely die. It was a simple choice. Trust God, or go their own way. Then one day, a serpent entered the garden. Sneaky. Clever. Dangerous. He whispered to Eve, "Did God really say you can't eat from that tree? You won't die. In fact, if you eat it, you'll become like God. You'll know good and evil. You'll be wise. You'll see what you're missing." Eve listened. The fruit looked good, beautiful, tempting. She reached out, took it, and ate. Then she gave some to Adam, and he ate too. In that moment, everything changed. Suddenly, they felt shame. They saw their nakedness. They tried to cover themselves with leaves. They hid from God. Sin had entered the world, disobedience, fear, selfishness, pain, and eventually, death. When God came to walk with them, they were no longer free. They were afraid. God asked, "Did you eat from the tree I told you not to?" Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. No one took responsibility. So, God told them the truth. Because of their choice, life would now be hard. The ground would be cursed. Pain would come with childbirth. Work would be full of sweat and struggle. And one day, their bodies would return to dust. They were banished from the Garden of Eden. The gates were closed. An angel with a flaming sword stood guard. But even then, God did not leave them hopeless. He made clothes for them out of animal skins, replacing their fragile leaf coverings with something more lasting, an early sign of sacrifice, of mercy. And even in judgment, God gave them a promise that one day, a descendant would come. Someone who would crush the serpent's head. Someone who would defeat sin and death. That promise was a glimpse of redemption, a spark of hope in the middle of darkness. Adam and Eve left the garden. But God went with them. Their story didn't end with failure. It began the story of us all, of brokenness, yes, but also of a God who still pursues, still forgives, and still offers a way back to life. Noah, the rescue boat. Generations passed after Adam and Eve left the garden. The earth became full of people, but also full of sin. People forgot about God. They did whatever they wanted, cheated, stole, hurt each other. Violence and corruption spread everywhere. God looked at the world he had made, and his heart was broken. But not everyone turned away. There was one man, Noah, who was different. Noah walked with God. He listened. He obeyed. While the rest of the world ignored God, Noah stayed close to him. One day, God spoke to Noah. "I'm going to send a flood. A storm like the world has never seen. I will wash the earth clean of all this evil. But you and your family will be saved. Build a boat, a great ark. Make it long and wide and strong. Bring 2 of every kind of animal, male and female. Birds. Beasts. Crawling things. Bring food. Bring supplies. Get ready. It sounded crazy. A massive flood? A giant boat in the middle of dry land? People saw Noah building and laughed at him. What are you doing, old man? Where's this flood you keep talking about? You're wasting your time. But Noah didn't stop. He kept building, kept trusting, kept preparing. And then the sky darkened. The rain came. Soft at first, then stronger, then fierce. Thunder shook the sky. Water burst from beneath the earth. Streams became rivers. Rivers swallowed cities. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Everything was covered. Mountains disappeared beneath waves. People tried to escape, but it was too late. Only the ark floated safely above the chaos. Inside were Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives. And pairs of animals, roaring, chirping, hissing, snoring. God remembered Noah. Eventually, the rain stopped. But the earth was still covered in water. Days passed. Weeks. Noah sent out a raven. It flew back and forth, but found no dry land. Then he sent a dove. The first time, it came back, nothing. The second time, it returned with an olive leaf. Life was coming back. The third time, the dove didn't return. The waters were going down. Noah waited patiently. And finally, God said, "Come out of the ark. You, your family, and all the animals. Go. Fill the earth again." Noah stepped onto dry ground. The world was fresh, quiet, washed clean. The first thing Noah did? He built an altar. He thanked God. He worshipped. And God made a promise. A covenant. Never again will I flood the whole earth. Even though people may sin, I will show mercy. This rainbow in the sky, it's my sign. A reminder of my promise. From that day on, every time a rainbow appeared in the sky, it would tell the story. That God is just. That he hates evil. But that he is also full of grace, mercy, and faithfulness. He saved Noah then. And he still rescues those who trust him today. Abraham, the journey of faith. As more years passed, God was writing a bigger story. And to move that story forward, he chose a man, not a king, not a warrior, but a nomad named Abram. Why Abram? Not because he was the strongest. Not because he had a large family or army. But because he had something more valuable, faith. One day, God spoke to Abram. Leave your country. Leave your people. Leave everything familiar. Go to a land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. And through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. It was a bold command. Abram was already 75 years old. He and his wife, Sarai, had no children. But without knowing exactly where he was going, he went. He packed his tents, gathered his flocks, took his nephew Lot, and began the journey to a promise he couldn't yet see. God led him to a new land, Canaan, and said, "This is it. One day, your descendants will live here." But there was a problem. Abram still had no children. God took him outside one night and told him to look up at the stars. Can you count them? That's how many descendants you will have. And Abram believed God. Years passed. Still no child. He grew older. Sarai grew older. The promise seemed impossible. At one point, they even tried to help God by having a child through Sarai's servant, Hagar. That led to pain and conflict, but God's promise hadn't changed. Then one day, God came again and gave Abram a new name, Abraham, meaning father of many. Sarai became Sarah. And God said, "This time next year, Sarah will have a son." They both laughed. Not out of mockery, but out of amazement. Sarah was almost 90. Abraham was 100. But just as God said, Sarah became pregnant. And they had a son, Isaac. A miracle. Laughter. Joy. And proof that with God, nothing is impossible. Years later, God would test Abraham's faith in an even deeper way, asking him to give up the very son he had waited for. And even then, Abraham obeyed. At the last moment, God stopped him and provided a ram as a sacrifice instead. That moment became a symbol, a glimpse, of something greater to come. God's promise wasn't just about a son. Or a nation. It was about a Savior. He told Abraham, "Through your family, all nations will be blessed." That blessing echoed forward through generations. Through Isaac. Through Jacob. Through King David. And eventually, to Jesus. A descendant of Abraham. The one who would bless the world by saving it. The story of Abraham is a story of faith, of trusting when it doesn't make sense, of walking when you don't know the destination, and of believing that God keeps his promises, even when the odds seem impossible. Jacob, the struggle and the promise. Isaac, the miracle child of Abraham and Sarah, grew up and had sons of his own. Twin boys, Esau and Jacob. Even before they were born, they struggled inside their mother's womb. God told her, "2 nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger." When the time came, Esau came out first, red and hairy. Right behind him, gripping his brother's heel, was Jacob. His name meant the one who grasps or deceiver. And that name would follow him. As they grew, the differences between the brothers became clear. Esau was a skilled hunter, rugged, wild, favored by their father, Isaac. Jacob was quiet, thoughtful, and stayed near the tents, loved deeply by their mother, Rebekah. One day, Esau came in from hunting, exhausted and starving. Jacob was cooking stew. Esau begged for a bowl. Jacob replied, "Sell me your birthright first." Esau, thinking only of the moment, agreed. That moment revealed Jacob's nature, clever, calculating. But the bigger deception came later. As Isaac grew old and blind, he prepared to give his final blessing, a sacred passing of leadership, honor, and God's promise. Rebekah helped Jacob disguise himself as Esau, putting goat skins on his arms and Esau's clothes on his back. Jacob stood before his father and lied. Isaac, uncertain but convinced, gave the blessing to Jacob. When Esau returned and found out, he was devastated and furious. "I'll kill him," he said. Jacob had to run. He left everything behind, his home, his family, his comfort, and fled into the wilderness. One night, alone and afraid, Jacob stopped to sleep on a rock. And something amazing happened. He dreamed of a ladder, stretching from earth up to heaven. Angels were going up and down on it. And at the top stood God. God spoke. "I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. I will give this land to you and your descendants. They will be like the dust of the earth, uncountable. I am with you. I will protect you. I will not leave you until I've done all I've promised." Jacob woke up stunned. Surely God is in this place, and I didn't know it. He named the spot Bethel, House of God. Years passed. Jacob worked for his uncle Laban. He was tricked into marrying both of Laban's daughters, Leah and Rachel. He had 12 sons through his wives and their servants, sons who would one day become the 12 tribes of Israel. But Jacob's life remained a life of struggle, family tensions, deceit, and hard lessons. Then one night, everything changed. Jacob was on his way home, finally ready to face Esau after many years. He was afraid, unsure of how Esau would respond. That night, Jacob was left alone. And a man appeared, a mysterious figure, and wrestled with Jacob all night. They struggled in the dust, neither giving in. As the sun began to rise, the man touched Jacob's hip and dislocated it. Still, Jacob would not let go. "I won't let you go unless you bless me." The man asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man said, "but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob named that place Peniel, meaning face of God, because he had seen God and lived. From that moment on, he walked with a limp and a new identity. No longer just the deceiver. Now, Israel, the one who wrestled, who changed, who was chosen. The promise God made to Abraham was alive in Jacob. And through his 12 sons, the nation of Israel was born. God had taken a broken, flawed man and shaped him into the father of a people. Because God doesn't only choose the strong. He chooses those who hold on, even when it's hard. Joseph, from the pit to the palace. Of all Jacob's 12 sons, one stood out, Joseph. He was bright, kind, full of dreams. And most importantly, he was his father's favorite. Jacob gave him a special gift, a robe of many colors, a beautiful coat that flowed like royalty. It wasn't just a garment. It was a symbol. To his brothers, it was a problem. Jealousy burned in their hearts. Joseph didn't help. He shared his dreams, dreams where his brothers bowed down to him, where he stood in a place of honor. They were furious. "Let's get rid of him," they whispered. "Let's see what happens to his dreams then." One day, while far from home, they attacked him. They ripped off his coat, threw him into a dry pit. Then they saw a caravan heading to Egypt. And in a moment of cruelty, they sold their brother as a slave. They took his torn coat, dipped it in blood, and told their father a lie. "Joseph is dead." Jacob wept. His heart was shattered. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph's journey was just beginning. Sold to a high-ranking officer named Potiphar, Joseph worked hard. He earned trust. God's favor was on him, even in slavery. But trouble came again. Potiphar's wife lied about him. Joseph was wrongly accused and thrown into prison. Alone. Forgotten. Years passed. But even in the darkest cell, Joseph kept trusting God. And one day, everything changed. Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, had a disturbing dream. No one could explain it. Then someone remembered the young man in prison who could interpret dreams. Joseph was called. He stood before Pharaoh, humble, steady. "Your dream means this. There will be 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. You must prepare now, or many will starve." Pharaoh was stunned. Can we find anyone else like this man, filled with the Spirit of God? Joseph was lifted from the prison to the palace. He became second in command over all Egypt. He was 30 years old. And just as Joseph said, the famine came. From distant lands, people arrived, begging for food. Among them, his brothers. They didn't recognize the powerful Egyptian ruler before them. But Joseph recognized them immediately. They bowed low, just like in his dream. This was his moment. He could have had them imprisoned. Or worse. But Joseph didn't choose revenge. He chose something far greater, forgiveness. He tested their hearts first, then broke down in tears. "I'm your brother. Joseph. The one you sold." They were shocked. Terrified. But Joseph said something extraordinary. "Don't be afraid. You meant it for harm. But God meant it for good, to save many lives." He embraced them, wept with them, reunited his family, and brought his father Jacob to live safely in Egypt, together once again. The boy who had been thrown in a pit had become the man who saved nations. Because even in betrayal, slavery, and prison, God was with him, guiding every step. Closing, the bigger story. The book of Genesis ends with Joseph's story. But really, it's just the beginning. These aren't just old stories. There are stories. Adam and Eve remind us how easily we choose our own way and how deeply we need God's grace. Noah shows us that one person's faith can change the course of history. Abraham teaches us to trust, even when we don't understand. Jacob reveals how struggle can shape us and how God meets us in our weakness. Joseph reminds us that what others mean for harm, God can use for good. Through it all, God is faithful. People fail. People mess up. People run, hide, lie, and fall. But God, He never gives up. He weaves every broken piece into a bigger, redemptive story. And that story doesn't end in Genesis. It keeps going through Moses, David, the prophets, all the way to Jesus, the true Savior, the fulfillment of the promise made to Abraham, the one who brings hope, healing, and a forever home. Outro, you are part of the story. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, share it. Someone else needs to hear. You're not forgotten. You're not too far gone. You are part of the story God is still writing. And it's not over yet.